So we will be discussing how are you going to write the discussion section of your paper, okay? So this is the last section after the findings of the study. So do not forget to follow your statement of the problem for your tables in the findings of your study. Well, except for the one who will be doing qualitative research. For the quali research, I hope you can seek help from someone who is an expert for on quali research. I think we have psychology teachers and even students who are very much familiar on how to do the data analysis. But I hope you have collected your data na naka-start na kayo kasi mas mahirap yan kesa sa quanti. But anyway, after doing the findings of your study, you have to do the discussion section. When we discussed the findings or the results section, I told you not to include any interpretation there. You just have to simply present your data, whether you are going to use a table or you can have the textual presentation or even the graphical presentation, as long as you don't include explanation or interpretation there. Because the interpretation will be written here in this section. So again, the purpose of the discussion section is for you to interpret and describe the significance of the findings of your study in light with what is already existing. So you have to compare actually the findings of your study to the ones that are already known. Okay? So, syempre, you have to check whether what you have gathered in your study affirms what is already existing in the body of knowledge. Or if it does not affirm, then it might be a contradicting result, but it's still a result. You just have to discuss that. Okay, so just like the findings or the results section, the discussion section is also connected to the introduction, especially to our statement of the problem, or that is what we call the research questions. Therefore, when you're going to discuss your results, you will be syempre interpreting the result. The arrangement will still be following the arrangement of the questions in your
Paligsik.
piece. Kaligsik. Kaligsik. Okay. So again, you will still follow the arrangement of the questions in your SOP, and at the end of that you have to make a decision of what are you going to do with your hypothesis. Okay, so you should clearly state in the discussion if you are going to either reject or accept your hypothesis. Most of the time it will be the null hypothesis. Okay. Okay lang. So again, aside from discussing the result, at the end of the discussion section, you have to be clear with your decision on whether you are accepting or rejecting your null hypothesis. And your discussion, syempre, will revolve around the findings of your study, but you have to connect that with your introduction, with your review of related literature. Since I told you a while ago that you are going to compare the result with the existing body of knowledge. And that existing body of knowledge is supposedly found in your review of related literatures. So, ayun, it's not just simply copying your RRL and then pasting it in the discussion section. You have to clearly explain how your study will help the readers understanding of your research problem. From where you left them with your RRL. Syempre, the RRL is not complete. It's an existing body of knowledge, but you are here presenting another solution for another problem, or kung the same problem man for another, but you will have another solution for that. And syempre hindi pa kompleto yung RRL, so you'll be completing that in your paper. And you have to ano, provide your readers answers for that since you left them hanging in the RRL. So what makes an effective discussion? So kapag mag-ano ka na, mag-discuss ka na, the first paragraph should be you introducing again the purpose of your study. Again, you go back to the purpose of the study before you you dig deeper into the explanation of the results of the study. Okay, again, number one, you have to provide first the purpose of your study and then discuss the first finding, and that is based from the first SOP. If your first SOP is asking about the demographic profile, then you're going to explain the result of the demographic profile after the purpose of the study. You have to highlight the implications of these results. Okay? Most likely, yung recommendation na part will be on the last part, and the recommendations will be based on the significance of the study. So whoever entities you have included in the significance of the study, you have to get back to them in the recommendation section, but then again, that will be located on the last part of the paper. So purpose, and then on the middle, you will have the discussion of the results of your study, and on the next one, you will have the conclusion, and then again, lastly, you will have the recommendation. So if, for example, in your significance of the study, you stated there that the number one beneficiary of your study will be the students of GSD MSFI, you have to recommend sa last part in the discussion section of your paper kung what will really be the help of the result of the study sa students na yan na na-identify nyo. Okay? So a successful discussion section puts your findings in context. So it should include first, syempre, the results of your research after the purpose, and then a discussion of related research. So class, when you are going to read a discussion section, you will find there na para siyang RRL kasi you will see citations. Kasi hindi lang siya basta-basta, okay, this is the result of my study and then that's it. You have to explain it, and again, you have to compare it to the existing body of knowledge. So you have to repeat again, like you have to explain again what's that existing body of knowledge, and you have to either confirm na yes, your result is like incongruent with the existing ones, or hindi, ano siya, tawag dyan, nagko-contradict siya. So again, marami tayong makikita na RRL in the discussion section. And then a comparison between your result and initial hypothesis. That is the reason why I told you to clearly give a decision on what are you going to do with your hypothesis, whether you are rejecting that or accepting that based on the results of your study. So before you're going to write the discussion section, you have to first ask yourself the following questions. Number one, was your hypothesis correct? Tama ba yung hypothesis mo? Let's just use the null hypothesis, ha? Tama ba yung null hypothesis mo? Para makagawa tayo ng decision whether to really accept or reject it. And number two, if my hypothesis is partially correct or entirely different, what can be learned from the results? So like when you're going to reject your null hypothesis, then you have to explain why are you rejecting your null hypothesis. And number two, what can we get? And what have we discovered or what have we found while we are rejecting your hypothesis? Now, number three, how do the conclusions reshape or add onto the existing knowledge in the field? And what does previous research say about the topic? So that is the reason why I told you a while ago that you have to include a review of related literatures and studies in the discussion section. Kasi babalikan mo sila. Ito yung mga existing na literature sa topic ko. And ayan, i-explain mo sila. And how is it related to the findings of my study? Is it related or is it not? Okay. So why are the results important or relevant to your audience? Do they add further evidence to a scientific consensus or disprove prior studies? So ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, if your findings either confirm the existing ones or nagko-contradict. You have to clearly state that in the discussion. So how can future research build on these observations? What are the key experiments that must be done? It will be on the last part kasi this question will give us the recommendation. Okay? Kasi when you recommend, you will be syempre, it will be for further research or for further experimentation. And what is the take-home message you want your reader to live with? You have to state that in the discussion section. That's the end of your research. In the introduction, you have presented your problem and you had offered there your solution. Diba? You have your hypothesis. Therefore, at the end of your research, you have to clearly tell your reader whether your hypothesis is correct or not, or your proposed solution to the problem is like effective or not, depending on your study. So take note of the following parts of the discussion section. The first paragraph again, sabi ko kanina, you have to restate the purpose of your study. And then it will be followed by the essential interpretation based on the key findings. Start with statement number 1, statement of the problem number 1, and then that is, the findings of the SOP number 1, and then clearly interpret that and include a main piece of supporting evidence. When you say mag-include ka ng supporting evidence, ayun yung sinasabi kong lagyan mo ng RRL, okay, that will support the result of your study. Kung merong magsusupport. Ano kung wala? Let's move on to the second paragraph. Compare and contrast to previous studies. Okay? Kung parehas ba kayo ng result or hindi. And you have to highlight the strengths and limitations of the study. Your own study, you have to highlight in the discussion. What are the strengths of your study? What have you found in your study? But what are the limitations you had or you had encountered in your study? You have to tell that also. So kaya yung sinabi ko kanina, sino nag-chat sa akin last time? Kagabi ba yun? Na hindi lahat ng hospitals reply. That's okay. We can't do anything about that. And that will become limitations of your study. You have to include that in the discussion. Okay? So it's okay. Accommodate. Again, it's okay. Wala tayong magagawa if some hospitals will not allow you to do your research there. So kung sino lang yung nag-confirm, ayun lang yung inyong result. And then again, that may become the limitation of your study. Hindi sila nag-reply. So ito yung results namin. Hindi kasali yung iba. Kasi again, hindi sila nag-reply. Ayun. And then the last paragraph, you have to summarize the hypothesis and purpose of the study again. Highlight the significance of the study. And that is doing your recommendation. Discuss unanswered questions and potential future research. So both of that means you are going to write your recommendations based on the findings of your study. Actually, class, it's not limited to 3 paragraphs only, It's just that we have 3 parts for the discussion section. The purpose, the interpretation of the results one by one based on the SOP, and then providing comparison with that of the existing body of knowledge, highlighting the strengths and limitations of your study, and if ever you have unexpected findings, you may also include that in the discussion. And yung last paragraph na yung number 1, conclusion, and then lastly, you have the recommendation. So again, contents of the interpretation, kasi the first part, after the purpose of the study, will have your interpretation. So how are we going to interpret the findings of the study? So number 1, you have to state the condition. So when you say condition, this refers to the findings discovered in the research. Okay? You have to restate, class, the findings of your study here. Remember, you have presented that one already in the results section, but you have to include the condition or the findings discovered in your research again in the discussion section. And then number 2, possible cause of condition. You have to explain why have you gotten this kind of result? Ano kaya ang reason bakit, for example, mataas yung score nila sa certain area na ito sa questionnaire mo? And bakit kaya medyo mababa sila dito sa area na to? Okay? You have to try to explain that one. And you have, how are you going to do that? You have to look for RRL that will support your idea or the possible reason that you can think of dun sa condition na yan or sa result na yan. Possible effect of the condition, this refers to the result of the existence of the condition discovered. So we are talking about the implication here. Okay, the implications of the findings of your study. Again, you have to restate the condition, meaning the findings of your study, and then you have to try to explain and highlight the possible reason or the possible cause sa findings mo na yan. Kung mataas, mababa ang score, kung experimental yan, positive ba yung nakuha niyo na result o negative, wala siyang effect, ano kaya ang reason? Okay? Again, you have to back it up with RRLs or related studies from other authors. And then again, you have to include the implications. Ano kaya yung magiging result? Ano kaya yung magiging like benefit if ito yung result ng study mo? Okay? That's the possible effect of the condition. And then the measures to remedy the unsatisfactory condition or to strengthen the favorable one. Okay, so it's not just about explaining the result, it's not just about looking at the implication, but if you have discovered that the findings is unsatisfactory, yung hindi natin gusto, especially sa mga experimental na study, nag-negative, wala pala siyang effect. So ano kaya yung gagawin natin? Ano kaya yung masasuggest mo na gagawin in response to the unsatisfactory result? Or if you have a very strong result, like it affirms the condition na ini-investigate mo, you have to highlight that, and you have to also include recommendations on how are we going to strengthen your favorable results. Okay? Comparison of findings with those of the previous studies. Hindi talaga ito nawawala sa discussion section. Kasi nga meron tayong related studies na tinatawag doon sa review of related literatures and studies mo na part sa introduction. So ano silbi nun? Siyempre, ang silbi ng mga nilagay nyo na related studies doon is for your discussion section. Okay? Kasi you really have to compare the results of your study to the existing ones. Kung pareho ba kayo ng results with the other investigator or not. Okay? So, yan yung mga dapat i-include mo sa discussion section. So, let's talk about the do's and don'ts of writing the discussion section of your paper. Don't muna tayo. Do not rewrite your abstract. Okay? Statements with we investigated or we studied generally do not belong in the discussion. Okay? Do not use we ha in the discussion section. Just use the researchers. Okay? But do not rewrite your abstract. So include new arguments or evidence not previously discussed. Necessary information and evidence should be introduced in the main body of the paper. Okay? Baka bigla kasing lumiko yung inyong discussion na hindi naman talaga siya kasali from the beginning. Meron kayong nakita sa findings ng inyong study na finding siya for you but hindi nyo kasi siya na-include in starting from the introduction. Do not include that anymore. And then do not apologize. Do not apologize. Even if your research contains significant limitations. Just like sabi ko kanina, hindi nag-reply yung ibang hospitals. And ito lang yung results niyo, but never apologize. Kasi your result is still considered a result. Okay, even if again, you have limitations in your study. Okay? Now, shy away from speaking on limitations or negative results. So, including limitations and negative results will give reader a complete understanding of the presented research. You may tell the reader sa discussion section the limitations of your paper, pero do not dwell on that. Limitahan lang natin, wag mo natin i-highlight masyado yung mga limitations like yung mga sources of potential bias, threats to internal or external validity of your questionnaire, barriers to implementing an intervention, and other issues na inherent to the study design. Huwag niyo na masyadong i-highlight yan. You can state the important ones sa limitations, pero again, do not over-highlight that. Overstate the importance of your findings. Making grand statements about how a study will fully resolve large questions can lead readers to doubt the success of the research. So if you have like a very good result with your study, wag din masyadong i-bloat. Do not make grandiose statement about that. It's just that you just have to highlight the important ones, discuss them, pero wag nang i-overemphasize. Okay? So, yung do's, naskip ko pala itong do's kanina. So, ang do's, anong gagawin natin with our discussion section of your paper? Read the journal's guidelines and the discussion and conclusion section. If possible, learn about the guidelines before writing the discussion to ensure your writing to meet their expectation. Actually, this is for the ones na ipapublish sa mga journals. Kasi iba-ibang journals, iba-iba silang guidelines on how to make the discussion section. I'll let you see later examples of the discussion section. Yung sa institutional format naman natin. Okay? Again, begin with a clear statement of the principal's findings. Findings muna before, syempre, ang discussion. Okay? Again, findings muna before yung explanation or yung interpretation. And then you have to explain why the outcomes of your study are important to the reader. So nasali ko na to kanina, sabi ko na, you have to give your implications ng findings. Okay? Pero you have to support that with existing body of knowledge. Okay? State whether the results prove or disprove your hypothesis. So if your hypothesis was disproved, what might be the reason? Again, you have to, diba, clearly give a decision about your hypothesis. But if it is disproved, kasi ni-reject natin yung hypothesis, you have to explain what's the possible reason why we are rejecting your hypothesis. Introduce new or expanded ways to think about the research question. So indicate what next steps can be taken to further pursue any unresolved questions. This will be on the part of the recommendation. So based on your findings, what can you recommend, especially if you have like negative results or unsatisfactory results? Think of any recommendations that you can give to resolve unanswered questions. So if dealing with a contemporary or ongoing problem such as climate change, discuss possible consequences if the problem is avoided. Depende na to sa study ninyo. Example lang yung climate change na yan. Pero again, that's part of the recommendation section. Sa findings, after knowing the findings of your study, you may recommend another one for further investigation. So be concise, adding unnecessary detail can distract from the main findings. So do not shy away with the topic. Stick with what you are talking about, starting from the introduction na part. Now let me show you a finished paper. Yung medtech lang na study para you can relate. Search office. Feeling ko maraming laman yung Gmail ko. And ngayon na ako ulit maka-open. May sinend pala sinundalig dito. Wait lang. Daghan kay gunod akong email. Daghan kay gunod akong inbox. Wala na akong kasabot. Sa apelido. Itong last, ang culmination ng inyong research, we will have a research forum wherein you are going to present your study again sa audience. That's part of the dissemination. Quantity na paper, let's ask permission first if it's okay for them to give you a copy of your research. Ito lang ha, kasi ito yung mabilis ko makita kasi nanalo kasi ito sa research forum last time, second place sila. Yung nanalo, psych na study, so they will be awarded best researcher during the graduation. So ito, second sila. But anyway, this one is a good medtech study. Ila-abner niya siya. So medical fake news and fear mongering. So ito yung kabuuan ha. Please take note. Before tamo adto sa discussion section, ipakita na lang ako dahil ng iban nga parts. So after the title page, please take note of the title page ha. You have the approval sheet. Please include this also. The same set of panelists. Si Dean pa rin ang chairman. Okay? And then, please do not forget the acknowledgement if you have not yet included this until now. And then please take note of the arrangement. So you may place God first here, and then the institution, the administrator, the panelist, and your advisor. Nakapasunod yan siya. Depende na kung paano niyo siya isulat. Basta the panelist and your advisor. And then you can also include your respondents if you want to thank them for giving their time for your study. And other people may follow. Okay, other people may follow here depending on who you want to acknowledge in your study. And then this is the researchers. Okay, and then you have to do the abstract. An abstract class is a 1 page. Take note, 1 page lang tayo. Hindi tayo dapat sumobra ng isang page for the abstract. And it's not indented ha. The abstract is not indented. The abstract is like a summary of your paper. So like you give a little summary of your problem followed by the objective. Please take note of that. Objective sunod. Ang sunod ana sa objective is the methodology. So kasali na dun yung instrument na ginamit nyo and ano yung ginawa nyo. Very little description of the methodology of your study. And then results. But you don't need to give all the results. You just have to give the salient ones. Okay? The most important ones. Okay? For the results. And then the conclusion after. And then if you still have space, you may include a little recommendation based on the most important result na nakuha ninyo. Okay, so 1 page lang yan ha. So, and then sa last part, you have your keywords. These are words or phrases that are related to your study that if you are going to encode or like place your study in a bank, anong tawag dyan? Like yung sa ProQuest, anong tawag sa kanilang? Parang database. If the researcher is going to type these words, lalabas yung yung study niyo. And then the table of contents, do not forget that. Wag lagyan ng dot ha kasi marami ako nakikita na may dot. Nakahiwalay class ang list of appendices. Okay? And even the list of figures and the list of tables before you'll have the introduction part. Okay? So let's not dwell on the first part kasi you're done with this during your proposal defense. Let's have both the results and the discussion section. So wait, kataas ba? Sira. Ito talaga ang problem kapag ka naka-Microsoft Word siya nasisira. But anyway, this one should be in the next page. Methodology. After the methodology, we'll have the results. Okay? So do not forget how you're going to do the results. Start with introducing your problem again, and then with the table, after the table, the textual presentation, and then the arrangement should be following the SOP, okay? The SOPs. And then, konti lang nga yung results section nila. Mas mahaba yung discussion class. Okay? We're going to read the discussion section. Actually, again, they restated the purpose of their study, followed by, actually nagbigay pa nga sila little description of their problem here after the purpose, but they started with the first one, the first result, kasi the first question of their study is about demographic profile. So they have presented the result already in the results section, but they just highlighted the most important ones here in the discussion section. And then after presenting again the most important ones, syempre, nag-discuss sila. Kaya nga kung nakikita nyo dyan, merong mga parenthetical citation. Okay? So yung result nila, naghanap sila ng existing data or existing information or related literature or even studies for that will back up their results. Okay? Kung parehas ba or hindi. So nakapasunod na yan, SOP number 2 ang next, SOP number 3, and so on. Medyo mahaba talaga ang discussion na section. So isa-isahin mo talaga lahat ng results ng study. And then aside 'di ba from the interpretation, you have to give the implications pa. Ano yung result, ano yung effect ng study mo. Tapos magko-conclude ka pa kung i-reject mo ba or hindi yung inyong hypothesis, and then kung i-reject mo, i-explain mo pa bakit mo siya i-reject. Okay? Tapos, I think the recommendations is nasa baba na. Okay? Like this one, the current researcher would like to encourage future researchers and pharmaceutical companies. This one is a recommendation. So, nasa last part na yon. Okay? Yung implication nga nila nasa end pa. But that's okay. Nasa end yung implication. After the recommendation, ito nila. Medyo mahaba talaga. Okay? And then followed by the references, this should be on the next one. Ha? And then do not forget the appendices. Pangitaon na siya ni Dean. Okay, appendices. Pakipasunod. Kung inunan nyo lahat ng letters, isahin nyo ang letters. Appendix A, letter to the Dean. Appendix B, letter sa company. Appendix C, letter sa hospital or to whoever kayo nagbigay ng letter. Class, hindi nyo ilalagay yung dito. Iscan nyo muna yung mga letters ninyo na napirmahan. Tapos after the letters, you may have the survey questionnaire. Ito sa kanila kasi yung arrangement nila, questionnaire muna before yung mga letters. This is still okay. Okay? Even a copy of your informed consent, again, do not include the actual informed consent. You just have to include a sample. Kasi you are protecting the identity of your respondents. And kung ilalagay nyo siya dyan, syempre, malalaman natin sinong respondents ninyo. Okay, so yung sa kanila, naka-isa yung mga letters na. Letter sa ethics committee. I forgot the certificate. Pahabol ko lang yung certificate ha. Gusto ko kasing i-print na lang and I will be giving you a printed copy. And then i-ano nyo na lang siya. I-scan nyo na lang. Okay? Ayan, certificate from the statistician. This one is not the final paper kasi kaya walang letter. Wrong spelling yan, Lugto. L-U-G-T-U. Ma'am Lugto is a statistician. If you want to seek help from her, you may do that. Certificate from the grammarian. Pero this will be on the end na. Hindi nyo kailangan ng grammarian before the final defense. Sasunod na. Okay, pag human. Ito yung certificate nila. And then last will be the curriculum vitae. Again, walang magsi-selfie. And at the same time, kung naka-uniform ang isa, dapat naka-uniform ang lahat. Okay? Questions? Wait lang, kamagin na ko pa-joke. Give me at least 3 minutes. Okay, let's answer your papers here. Reko. Pwede mga 20 mananghid sa sa mga 4th year. Ano sa mga akong kamera? Wala mo akong nawang. Maybe. Hindi siya makadetect. Wala siya. Anyway, again, mananghid sa atong mga 4th year if it's okay for them na magbigay sila ng copy sa inyo. Need po ang results ng pilot. Yeah, hahanapin yan. You may place that one sa appendices. Okay? Isa-isahon ang questions. What do you mean? What do you mean? Kapag class, kapag meron kayong questionnaire, isa-isahin niya talaga yan lagay sa sa results na section. Look at this, sa results nila. Ito lahat ng questions na ito nakalagay sa nila, sa questionnaire. So like question number 1, kunin niyo lang ang mean ng lahat ng respondents. And then verbal description and interpretation. Pilot testing. Have you done the statistical test for the pilot testing ninyo? Ano ang result? Ano ang result ng pilot testing ninyo? Sino yung tinuruan kong mag-Cronbach's Alpha? Hala, pharma to? Kasi na pilot testing din Kasi kailangan may result ang okay. May nag-ano pala. Gigamitan Cronbach's stat. Okay. Very good. Oh, okay na, good na yan. Lagay niyo lang sa appendix yung parang table nila sa Cronbach's Alpha. May table yan. May scores yan, di ba? Values. You can do that with the Excel also. You can also do that with the JASP. Nagturo ata ako last time sa pharma. Mas marami kasi akong time sa pharma kasi 2 hours yung klase nila sa research. Sa inyo kasi 1 hour lang. Unya, maigo pa dyan sa mga holidays and sa mga unsa-unsa sa world. Okay, so inganin ninyo pagbutang isa-isahon kada questions. Get the mean from all the respondents per question and also get the grand mean or the total mean. Okay? Hindi siya per respondents, per question siya. Tapos kukunin nyo yung mean ng per question. Wait lang ha. Kaya marag na yung iabot. Wait lang. Okay, anything else? Again, yung table ang ilagay nyo ha sa appendices for the result of your pilot testing. Ang grammarian pagkatapos na ng final defense. So after the final defense, you will be like editing your paper, revising your paper depending on the recommendations of the panelists. And then after you have to have it checked by your advisor. And then after sa advisor, you have to submit your paper to the research office para ma-forward sa grammarian. Now, after checking by the grammarian, syempre isasauli sa inyo and then you have to revise again depending again on the recommendations of the grammarian. Tapos pag matapos nyo nang ma-edit, you have to email that back to the research office for final checking. And then if okay na sa research office, then the research office will give you a signal for the hardbound. Okay? Pwede na mag-hardbound kung okay na. Face-to-face ang defense, no. Online. Nag-defense, galing ako actually sa defense ng Haggard, nakiko. Nag-defense ang psych from 1 p.m. up to 5:30. Nagkapahuay lang po at least 30 minutes ng klase na po sa inyo. Tapos again, nag-defense na ang psych. Online man. Wala atang abiso na on-site. Online pa rin. Okay. Kumusta na yung mga experimental? Kira mo? Kira itong mga nag-experimental. Wala na concerns.